Well, I may not love that music, but I love that we are live to talk about how to make your sales team an honest to God team. I think of sales very often as a lot more like tennis than it is like basketball or even cycling. And you may not know this, right? But the cycling teams often decide in advance who's going to cross the finish line first, and everything that they do between the start line and the finish line is orchestrated to bring that person through the finish line ahead of everybody else in the pack. So that's what we're here to talk about: how to make your sales team an actual team. And maybe you're not already on the bus that believes that it's actually a benefit to have your team be a team. So we may talk about that as well. I'm incredibly honored and excited and happy to have Rick Janicic with us. So Rick, please take a moment to introduce yourself to the crowd, and then we'll fairly soon get into the meat and potatoes of 8 ways to make your team an actual honest to God team.
Hey, Aaron, thanks very much. Pleasure to be with you and our listening and viewing audience all around the world. Hey, so I believe that greatness is not an accident. It's one of the most crucial decisions that a company leader has, is to select greatness, to choose greatness. And it's tough. It's a really difficult thing to do, as is picking sales talent. If it's sales talent or if it's other talent, but sales talent is one of the most difficult ones, not dissimilar. In fact, I call it a Tom Brady problem. Every single NFL team in the league looked past Tom Brady, and they didn't do it just once or twice or 3 times or 4 times. The best did it 4 times. The worst did it closer to 8. And the consequences of not making a great choice of people who are on your sales organization or leading your sales organization costs you millions. So that selection quality and really figuring out what you must have and how you're going to evaluate and how you're going to weigh it is crucial. And that's really why we exist. My company is called Strike Zone Sales Systems, and we focus on helping B2B and SaaS leaders make better business decisions, especially about sales and sales talent that level up performance and shift teams and companies from good to great.
All right, so that's Rick. And Rick, we're starting to have that same audio problem, so I don't know if there's anything you can do to try to address that. I'm Aaron Schmuckler. I think of myself as a company culture engineer, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called the YesWorks. And if you think about your team and all the people in it, they're all neurons in a brain that is the team inside your company. And chemicals sometimes interfere with those neurons communicating and collaborating effectively. Sometimes the structure of those neurons themselves, if you think about those structure as skills, they can also interfere with communication and collaboration across the neurons in your brain. And so what we do at the YesWorks is we help make sure that the environment that your neurons are in and the skills that your people have lead to effective communication and collaboration, and systematically help you build a scalable and sustainable culture. So that's us at the YesWorks. Once again, we're here to talk about 8 ways to make your sales team an actual team. And before we get into the suggestion, our suggestions, Rick, why would people want to do that? Why does it matter that your team is more like a team and less like a tennis team?
So you're paying for everybody all the time. And if you're going to change the trajectory of somebody's career and you're going to ask them to join your organization, you're going to want to have that to be a case where they bring their best self. They're fully engaged. They're professionally noisy so that they try to bring their best friends and best colleagues to that organization well because they feel great about it. You have a different level of confidence when you feel like you're part of a team and that you want to talk with clients, even having the difficult questions or difficult conversations that you sometimes have in sales. And to have it be a fun place to be. Sometimes work is a 4-letter word. You don't want to make it a 4-letter word where it's a negative thing. You want to make it a positive thing. So to the extent possible, to get to your point, your neurons all aligned, neuronically aligned. There's a financial benefit, there's an operational benefit, there's a cultural benefit, there's a recruiting benefit, there's an engagement benefit. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really across the waterfront. Those are my hallucinations, but I welcome yours.
Great. I'll try not to hallucinate, but I was reading earlier this week that B2B sales teams have a 35% turnover rate across the B2B sales world. That's a huge, costly turnover rate. And was reading about one company that's become very teamy in their selling, and they've got a 3% turnover rate. Now, I don't know that, what do they say? Results may vary. But if we just look at that one factor, turnover alone, that's a reason to think about creating teams. And I think it completely resonates with what you are sharing. All right. So, Rick, I'm about to turn to you and ask you, what is your first suggestion for how leaders can make their teams? What have you got?
I think first and foremost, and I'm imagining that you and I are probably going to be rather aligned on this. It's tough to have a winning team if you don't have a winning team, and it does come down to the leader. It does come down to the coach, and that person has to really understand, who do I need to pick? How do I need to pick? How do I bring somebody from where they were to be fully engaged in this organization, fully productive in this organization, understanding the clients, understanding what it is that really take to be highly successful. Most salespeople are money motivated. Not all of them are, but many are. But there's always this helpful spirit, and you want to be able to, as the leader, be the one who understands, how am I going to select? Because it's not hiring. Hiring is easy. Have somebody fill out paperwork and boom, you're hired. It's about who you select that really matters, and making sure that as the leader, you can and you will help them develop in ways that they can be highly successful in your organization, so they can make a difference, make money for themselves, make money for you, and make money for their clients.
All right. So if you were to distill that down into one simple suggestion, how would you frame all that in one sentence?
Have a great leader.
All right. So a sales leader who is great, a sales leader who wants to build a team, that's the suggestion here, folks. So excellent. My first suggestion here is, I'll start off actually with a story. I was working with a sales leader about a year ago, probably, who wanted his sales team to be more engaged in relationship-based selling. And so I asked him, all right, well, why don't you talk to me about your KPIs and what are the things that you are talking to your team about, measuring in terms of their performance? And I saw things about calls. I saw things about numbers. I saw all kinds of stuff that you might expect to see on any sales team's KPIs. I didn't see a single behavior that was being measured that had to do with building relationships, things like calling John and finding out how things are going, or making introductions on behalf of this client or on behalf of this other adjacent company. So if you want your team to be relationship-based, then you're going to have to ask them specifically, measure specifically relationship-based behaviors. And so similarly, if you're looking to make your sales team a team, then you need to identify, name, ask for, measure, and recognize specific teaming behaviors, the kinds of behaviors that you want to see your team engaging in. What gets measured gets done. So you're going to have to do it if you want to see it.
Spot on. It's not that hard, but it is that hard.
Right. All right. We're not arguing or fighting yet. So maybe
hey, it's early. We
right.
will get there.
We've gotten through 2 through 8 so far without any fisticuffs. So Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you for your second suggestion.
So I think, again, it goes back to the leader. And that leader has got to be one that helps to set the level of respect and culture. Respect for the individuals and respect for the team, as it were. Because if you don't have that level of trust, if you don't have that level of uh, engagement and that level of knowledge of the others, you're probably not going to be willing to be in a room with them, listen to what they have to say, take their coaching, take the insights that they have, um, and reciprocally share some of the best things that you've come to learn and believe over a period in time, and to be able to have some of those tough conversations when things don't go well, where you can lean on that team and have them say, hey, you know what? Either in preparing in advance or post call to say, hey, oh my gosh, this was just a train wreck. I don't know what happened. I did this, but still it didn't turn out well. Help me understand, help me get better for the next one, because I can't afford to have another one of those.
So I'm hearing respect and reflection, feedback, the kind of stuff that we're talking about. When those neurons are interfacing, you've got to have those strong relationships of respect within the team if you're going to expect any kind of information flow that's healthy.
Agree.
All right. Well, still no fisticuffs, so I'm gonna come on to my second suggestion, and I think, Rick, that it actually dovetails really well with yours. And you just disappeared. We just lost Rick's visual, so hopefully Rick will be back shortly. My suggestion is read the book that's called The No Asshole Rule. The No Asshole Rule by Robert Sutton. And then follow its guidance. And what's underlying this suggestion that you read this book, The No Asshole Rule, is that you not permit people on your team who are rainmakers who also alienate people, whether they're alienating people in your company, other salespeople on their team, or in other parts of the company. If they're alienating your service providers, right? If they're alienating the people who have to deliver on his sales, if they're alienating other people inside your company, if they're alienating the client, even if the client is buying, if they're alienating your vendors, and if they're alienating even your competition, then they are not worth as much to your company as you think they are, just because of the revenue that they are bringing in. And I'm happy to say that we've got Rick's visuals back. So there you go, Rick. That's my suggestion number 2.
I'm a firm fan in the no asshole rule. And that does come back to selection at the outset, to be able to understand, hey, what kind of person are you? How do you deal under stress? And that is a testable process that you can use to really understand, is this person going to fit under the best of times as well as under the worst of times?
All right, so here we've done 4 suggestions. We've got 4 suggestions left for you folks. And here's my prediction. My prediction is that my final suggestion number 8 of 8, is going to create a shitstorm in the comments. So if you disagree, then please contribute to that shitstorm and stick around, of course, to the end so that you can find out what you vehemently disagree with me about. And so, Rick, so we might eventually get there. Let's hear your third suggestion.
Kind of like back to the Addams Family with Uncle Fester and having the train wreck. Yeah, we got to set the train wreck up. Got to get ready for that. I think it comes down to learning. Do I feel like I can learn from you, the leader, and from you, my colleagues, if I've done things right as a sales leader to develop that right culture, build that right level of trust, have that esprit de corps, I think you're going to get to the point where there is that ability to learn and get better, not just from external courses, but from your colleagues as well. And I think that's a crucial point. Now, it depends. The challenge with a lot of people in sales is, yeah, I'm part of a sales team, but I'm really off on my own. I'm the kicker rather than the quarterback, right? Where I have to go out and it's on me to do everything that it's required for me to be successful. So when I'm out, it's just me, it's one to many in my calls, whether they be over a phone, in person, or over Zoom. If you do, however, have to bring in an SE or another member of your team or another member of the sales team to do a larger, more complex engagement, perhaps, having that ability to know that I've learned things from you in terms of how we prepare, how we lead that room, how we run that room, how do we do signaling back and forth to one another to make sure we don't step on anything. I think having that learning culture and that is born of respect from other members of your team is a crucial piece.
I love that, Rick. And I think, if I'm noticing a theme through the three suggestions that you've given us so far, one is the leadership, the behaviors of the leaders really influence a lot, really affect a lot. And you're essentially telling sales leaders and leaders of organizations, if you want your people to behave like a team, then you've got to exhibit behaviors of teamwork yourself. You started with learning from each other. Learning from each other is an incredibly powerful teaming behavior. So my third suggestion, Rick, also starts with the word learn, and here my suggestion to leaders is learn the individual strengths and weaknesses of the people on your team. And what was the book? I think it was Break All the Rules. What this book from Gallup suggests is that what they've found over thousands of interviews with successful leaders is that they accept people for who they are. Maybe they work a little bit on people's weaknesses, but mostly they highlight people's strengths. And so if you learn about the strengths and weaknesses of the individuals on your team, then you can, if I can use this as a verb, you can moneyball it, right? The A's became an incredibly successful team with a tiny comparative budget because they selected people who filled in for one another's gaps. They hired or recruited to fill in gaps of skills that weren't on the team yet. So learn people's individual strengths and weaknesses, create small groups within your sales team that will have among them all the strengths that you need to really be successful as a team. And so you create small little tiger teams inside the team.
Yeah, you are a chemist to a certain extent.
I love
making
it.
sure that you can get that chemistry right. And it's difficult to do, but when you do, it's the difference between a bunch of young kids in an orchestra and going to see your local performing arts center. They know how to work together. They know how to watch each other. They know what to do with their ego when they step into those sorts of situations. And that happens when you do know their strengths and you do know their weaknesses and you do know the things that trigger them or set them off, and you avoid those things. So you're not a fire starter, or, to go back to your initial one, the no asshole rule. Yeah, and that's a lot of it does come back to selection. But if you do make a mistake in a selection, the only thing worse than making a bad decision is sticking with one. So sometimes you do need to change.
Well, and I love that you were talking about knowing what triggers the people on your team, right? What might trigger them to go off, right? And similarly, I think it can be valuable to know what triggers the prospect. Okay, we're learning about Jackie, that she really doesn't like to be interrupted. And if she gets interrupted, you can kind of kiss this sale goodbye. And so it might be better to send Rick to talk to Jackie than it would be to send me, because I hate to say it, I have a bad habit of sometimes interrupting people. So I may have the wrong weaknesses to bring Jackie's business in.
Yeah, I think that awareness of self, when you think of what Daniel Goleman came up with for his newer work, if I remember correctly, is about the three different focuses: the inner, the other, and the outer.
Mm.
And understanding what makes that other, what causes fidelity between somebody. If it's a member of your team or a client member, to be able to recognize, to be able to be outside of yourself and in that room with that person, watching their cues and watching when you do certain things to make sure that you can start to read them as accurately as possible, as quickly as possible, so that you can create that level of rapport and really help them know that they're heard. Because when you're heard, more often you're trusted. Not always, but usually that's the case.
Terrific addition, Rick. So we've each, folks, got one more suggestion for you. We've given you 6, so there are 2 more coming. And I'll remind you that my last suggestion, I think, is going to create a shitstorm of comments in the comments. So, Rick, before we get to our last 2 suggestions, tell the folks how, why they might want to get in touch with you.
So thank you for that. I work through Strike Zone Sales Systems. I apologize for as long as it is. You can just say getstrikezone.com and it'll still bring you to the website. That's probably the best way. Our phone number's there, our email's there. You can reach us there. Diagnostically, how do you know you need somebody that does what we do? So if you've got a sales team that is not delivering the way that you want, they're losing too often, the sales cycles are too long, you're hemorrhaging clients, your sales team is not getting it done. Mm-hmm. And you realize that if you don't fix that, it's not going to get better with time. Often it's difficult to figure out what is the problem. Is it the team? Is it the leader? Is it the product? Is it the company culture? Is it the target market that you're going after that's just not right? So diagnostically being able to figure that out with science and math and data, and that's what we do, so that you can really level up that team. Make sure that your team is being their best when it counts the most, and making sure that you've got the right leadership there that can help ensure that thing happens. So that's what we're all about. And after it's all said and done, it's about having more fun, getting more wins, making more money.
Terrific. And one other way that you can reach Rick, because I know he's been responsive to me on LinkedIn, is here we are. You may be watching us on LinkedIn or listening to us on LinkedIn, and so you can find Rick there as well. All right, Rick, what is your final suggestion for folks about how to turn their sales team into an honest-to-God team?
Help me win. Teach me how to win. If I can learn how to be better at what it is that I do as a consequence of being on this team, not just being an individual who, yeah, I know what your name is. Yeah, we work for the same company. But if I've got that level where that level of intimacy, that level of understanding, that level of trust, that level of belief, that level of respect for you, where you can help me be better. You can help make sure that I can bring in that sale earlier. You can help me see a blind spot that I may not have for that competitor, that situation, whatever that scenario is. But ultimately, as salespeople, winners want to be on winning teams, and it's a lot more fun that way. You make more money that way. You feel better about yourself that way, and that's going to affect every aspect of your life. So if you've got a situation where that culture is such that you look to that team to help you understand how to win more, to get that little bit of an insight to know, say it this way, do it this way, don't do it that way. You're going to go, and once that works once or twice, I think that's the magic. If until you see it once, you don't believe that it can happen. Once you see that it happens, then you can go and say, hey, you know what? I really am part of this team. I do want to be part of it because it nourishes me. It makes me better. I can win more often. That's great for me. It's great for the organization. It's great for the client, great for the team.
So teach me, train me, coach me how to win. I love it. Rick, with clients and with the folks on LinkedIn, I find myself often talking about what I call conventional unwisdom. And so
explain that one.
Well, there's a lot of conventional wisdom out there that is actually really destructive. So one of the pieces of conventional wisdom that I hear you dismantling here is the notion, and you hear people say this all the time: I hire great people and then I get out of their way. And I would say hire great people and then don't get in their way, and also help them, support them. One of the things that motivates people to work and to stay where they are working is developing their talents, filling in their blind spots. We all have blind spots, folks. So no matter who you hire no matter whom you hire, they're going to have blind spots. No matter whom you hire, there is better that they can do than they are doing today. And so if it isn't you who can help them, then at least get them the people, get them the feedback, get them the resources that are going to help them develop. Teach me how to win. Even if I'm winning, teach me how to win bigger, better. Teach me how to win in ways that sales can be a difficult, and sometimes if you haven't quite figured out how to do it in a way that feels good in your soul, it can be an erosion. It can be a corrosive career. So if I'm doing great, but I feel like my soul is being corroded, then maybe you as a leader can help me not perform better, but to keep my performance where it is while also feeling better about myself.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire, if you've seen the movie, help me help you.
Right, there you go.
But yeah, and all too often, it took me about 7 years before I got into sales. Early in my career, I was nagged and pestered and cajoled, and whatever series of adjectives you want to use. And the thing for me was, it wasn't until I saw somebody that I respected the way that they did it, because I always had this negative stereotype, like a lot of people do, about sellers. And once you can see somebody who really gets it, really does it well, is essentially a therapist and a doctor and an engineer simultaneously to figure out what's wrong and to do it in a humane way. Once you can see that works, and that works really well, and clients love it, you can start to model that behavior. But if you feel like you have to be a certain way and say a certain thing, even though you really don't believe it, that is abrasive and corrosive over time, kind of like sandpaper, and it'll wear you down. So yeah, I fully agree with you.
All right. Well, folks, before I come to my final suggestion, the one that I promise is going to cause a shitstorm in the comments, I'll just let you know that we have right now a manager's upskilling sprint that is enrolling. We've got 2 seats left. And great managers lead to great performance, great relationships inside your company, really strong culture, because your managers are some of your strongest purveyors and translators of culture. And it leads to really great retention and fulfillment for your people. So we've got this manager upskilling sprint coming up at the end of July with just 2 seats left. Feel free to get in contact with me for that. And if you're experiencing growing pains, if your team is getting bigger a little bit faster than your systems for effectively delivering and effectively communicating, that's another great reason to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Aaron Schmuckler there, and you can find me at theyesworks.com. And so here it is, folks. My suggestion that is going to cause a shitstorm in the comments. And if I think, Rick, if I had more confidence, I would tell people, okay, sit down and do this. But instead, I'm just going to say, consider doing this, because I'm too chicken shit to tell you to do it. Consider doing this. Stop paying your salespeople commissions, and instead pay them a salary that's got a little bit of, like 10% worth of movement for the entire team together, if not maybe the entire company together. So there it is. My shitstorm creating suggestion: stop paying salespeople commissions. And so I'll get into a little bit. I know you think that salespeople are coin operated. It's generally not true. Money motivated and coin operated are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. Your retention will go up. It may be a little bit harder in the short term to recruit if you're paying people this way. It will be easier in the long term to retain great salespeople this way. A few other things that I'll say about this is that, speaking of conventional unwisdom, competition is not good for sales. And Charlotte, thank you for agreeing with me. Competition is not good for sales. Competition is good for getting people to work harder faster. It's not good for getting people to work smarter. And one last thing that I'll say about this is that Daniel Pink, and I suggest you look this up on YouTube, Daniel Pink has a tremendous talk on YouTube where he outlines the science that shows that compensation, while it gets people to work harder and faster, actually degrades people's creative problem solving. And folks, sales is still a creative problem to solve. And so if you're motivating people through reward instead of motivating people intrinsically, then you're going to find that they don't perform as well even while they are working harder. Now, if you want some a little bit of social proof, this is how Boeing compensates their salespeople. This is how a company called Gravity Payments up here in Seattle, that's doing incredibly well, motivates its people. And its salespeople, by the way, did not leave during COVID to find greener pastures. So there it is. Rick, if you want to beat me up, feel free.
It's not a beat up thing. I think it's controversial for a lot of people and controversial for a lot of salespeople. And it's one of those things that until you see it work, you don't believe that it can.
That's exactly right.
And I think I don't know if it would be applicable in every situation and every circumstance because of, you call it B2B, but the way that you go to market, the length of cycle, the requirements of people, the number of calls to get to a close, the level of precision, the number of buyers, what the buy process looks like. There's so many different variables and factors that go into it that I think what's right for one would not be right for another. And a lot of it not just comes down to the culture of the sales team, but the culture of the company, and
Agreed.
whether or not that you can work together. There's enough friction already between sales and marketing, let alone sales, marketing, and the rest of the company. Getting that all right, again, that chemistry in a glass jar, if you will, super hard to do. But I've seen situations where it's low commission, high base,
Mm-hmm.
and again, a lot of it comes down to the senior leadership in the organization there to say, hey, no matter what it is that you need, whenever you need it, if we don't have sales, all we have is expense. So, help me help you get out there and win these clients. I don't know if I'd call it a shitstorm.
We'll see. So far,
I'm sure some people's heads are exploding out there. They're so confused right now they can't even find the keyboard.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing to think about, and I'm commission based in that I'm compensated based on how much business we do as a company at all. Simply because I'm an owner of the company. That's just the nature of the way it is for me. I have a conflict of interest when I'm talking to a prospect. It is discipline for me to think, you know what, maybe they don't need us. That is something that I really need on every single call to remind myself and then behave in accordance with that. And that's something that I'm happy to say I've developed that discipline. And if you and I, Rick, are on the same sales team, and I'm going to be compensated at all, and not if I close it, and not if you do, or more if I close it, and less if you do, then I'm motivated to hang on to this lead, even if I am not the best person to bring this across the finish line. Oh, and I agree with you that every situation is different. There are a lot of factors. You brought up sales cycles and the number of calls. So I'll just remind us that Boeing is among the list of companies that have gone this way. They've eliminated commissions. And a successful salesperson, I forget how many sales they make in a career, but it is single digits. The number of sales they make in a career is single digits. So even when you've got a long sales cycle, and perhaps especially when you've got a long sales cycle, this is really something worth considering. Consider not having commissions for your sales team. Anything you want to say, Rick, in closing?
You know what? We could have a conversation just about this question, just about this topic.
Oh man, we sure could.
Because I think it's one of those emotional puzzles that until you can lay out the realities of it and really test it. So it's one of those things that you don't believe it until you see it be true. But I think you take a look at some of the traditional stats. So of the number of deals somebody gets in a sales job, what percentage do they close? What's essentially their closing ratio on everything that comes in, not just in things that they say, I'm just going to work on these. Mm-hmm. Usually it's less than 10% as a general rule. So out of that, you've got to be very disciplined to select what you do work on, your portfolio of things that I'm going to say yes to. I'm going to put a lot of effort into it because I've got some kind of intellect and knowledge and experience and way to back test and say, this is a great prospect. This isn't a great prospect. I'm going to go after this one. Why? What do I do with all the other people who have either raised their hands or marketing has gone to try to get them to get involved in a sales cycle, even though they may or may not be in a buy cycle? I'd love to have a follow-on conversation about that. Maybe we do a collaborative post about that.
It'd be a good one.
Some video.
It would be a good one. Charlotte in the comments asks, take emotions out of thoughts here, question mark. And if I understand you correctly, Charlotte, I think what you're suggesting is that it's useful to think about this objectively instead of allowing our emotions to color our perceptions. And I both agree with this and disagree with it, because where we work, what jobs we choose, if I'm a salesperson looking for my next employment opportunity, my emotions are going to color this. And so the emotions is part of it. It's also incredibly difficult to remove emotion. And I think it can be important to at least identify and name the emotion, because as all great salespeople know, we make decisions emotionally and then justify them intellectually. So if you're considering actually having a non-commissioned sales force, then you're going to make this decision emotionally, and then you're going to justify it intellectually. So I hope I've given you at least some good justification for considering this change. And one more thing that I'll say about it is, don't think about it only in terms of revenue. Think about it also in terms directly. Think about it also in terms of the culture across the company. What's going to change between the dynamic or in the dynamic between the people doing the selling and the people who have to deliver? That is also going, those questions, and there are lots more of them, as Rick has talked about. Those questions are also going to affect your bottom line, and they're going to affect the sustainability of your company, and they're going to affect the value of your company long term. So, Rick, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree that we should continue this conversation about commission sales another time. Thank you, Charlotte, for your comments. Thank you, everybody, for joining us to have this conversation. I hope that this has been great food for thought about 8 ways that you can make your sales team more of an honest-to-God team. And I suggest that you take a few minutes after we're done here to think through what we've shared with you and make a commitment to yourself. What are you going to take action on? Rick, last call for parting thoughts.
It's not easy, but you can get good help to help you solve some of those difficult problems and sometimes you need that fresh thinking from the outside, from somebody who's seen not just one or two or three, but 20 or 30 or 50 situations to help you figure out really what's right for you. And I think, Aaron brings a lot of weight and visibility and depth into helping make those decisions and really thinking through the consequence of that so you can test it before you actually do it.
Very kind. And so I'll take this opportunity to remind people as well. If you haven't been able to figure out why you've reached a threshold in your sales, and if perhaps even your sales are starting to creep lower, then give Rick a buzz. He may be able to help you figure out what's preventing you from taking things to the next level. And so thank you everybody for joining us. This is Aaron, and if I may, for you, Rick, we are signing off.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.